I really look at it as a movement of young parents saying, we're not going to take it anymore. Like, companies need to be responsible. They need to be clean. They need to do their part. That's one thing we did get right at The Honest Company is we were two parents with a ton of information who nights and weekends, that brand for over 3.5 years to get that to the place where at launch, people are like, oh my God.
Some founder listening today who has been able to do enough, I don't know, customer validation or things to not just be like drinking their own Kool-Aid around their own boardroom table with their co-founders. Like, they legitimately have something. And now it's time to execute and scale. What's one of the rookie mistakes you see there?
Yes, you have the idea and you need to craft and hone and refine and touch it as many possible times, like cycle it a lot. Love and embrace the unvarnished, candid feedback. It hurts, but just deal with it.
Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larsen. On this episode, I'm excited to have someone I'm counting as a new friend, Christopher Gavigan. Christopher, thanks for doing this.
Hey, Jess, how are you?
I'm great. I'm interested. You've got a varied career, investor, author, multiple time entrepreneur. I'm guessing most well known for co-founding The Honest Company with Jessica Alba. But how do you describe your career when people say, what do you do?
It's always one that I trip on because the place where I derive the most satisfaction and depth of like true representation for me is being a father and parlaying the principles and the responsibility that I have for those young hearts and minds, and really trying to activate that in a professional world when that's come to life in a few different iterations over time throughout the course of my career. But it certainly has been around healing and uplifting the people and planet that I care most about. And so when it comes to what I do as a profession, that's like, I do things that I'm really passionate about that bring people and planet and the health of those two things together.
Anybody who's seen the videos on YouTube of you and Jessica Alba talking about your book and what you were doing with Healthy World and getting Honest Company started, and then obviously IPO at 1.4 billion. That's pretty exciting, and obviously valuations and markets are all over the place these days, but that's a big milestone. Maybe let's start with that business. When you look at reflection of 12 plus years as a co-founder there, what are some of your biggest takeaways that you maybe didn't expect starting that business?
God, I would really say one of the biggest ones that I underestimated and likely didn't give enough time and attention to whilst I was addressing, and really the work at Healthy Child, Healthy World was to empower a set of parents, particularly moms, and activating them with great content and great information around safe, healthy, non-toxic choices and why that matters, and how to navigate a marketplace full of questionable incidentals and harmful ingredients that were in everyday products. I underestimated and was surprised by the power of their voice. When you do something you're passionate about and you head along your journey and you educate and you inform and you alert and you alarm and you equip, and once you do that well, the magnitude and sheer collective force on what that does to a market and to an industry and to to that point, I really look at it as a movement of young parents saying, we're not going to take it anymore. Like, companies need to be responsible. They need to be clean. They need to do their part. And I'm going to shift my purchase behavior based on what I know now. And the power of especially the female voice in that all, I am uniquely so in awe and enamored and respectful and just so appreciative of that. And I've had an opportunity to really focus a lot of my careers and businesses on how do I activate that feminine and female voice and empower that specific audience, because I think they are the force that is most loving and thoughtful when it comes to the future of people and planet, and their ability to forecast the needs, not based on selfish principles or ideals of the moment, but a thought of the future. I think that's a powerful force that is broadly underestimated in today's work environment, particularly as you care for future generations.
It's interesting to me going through the history of advertising, and when all of a sudden the advertising world fell in love with teenagers and this myth of lifetime value of a customer. Like, oh, if we get them while they're young, then look at this lifetime value of the customer. When in reality, so often as they evolve, they end up switching brands in these different phases of their life, and it's mothers and the retired people that have all the money. Like, car companies would make so much more money advertising to their mom than me, and way more money advertising to me than to my daughter. Right? Yeah. My oldest is 19, and you think like, so, you know, so I'm thinking about when you guys were starting this 12 years ago, she's 7, right? It was about that time that my wife got really into finding out what chemicals were on the bell peppers we were buying at the grocery store with our friend Meredith Blake. She was doing a bunch of stuff for our charity Child Rescue. She'd run Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth campaign and a number of things. And Meredith, like, I got to sit through all these conversations with Meredith. And
I know Meredith. She was on the nonprofit Healthy Child, Healthy World.
Oh, you're kidding? Okay. So you did this to us. You got Meredith excited about it. She talked to my wife. We bought so much different stuff than I grew up with because of Meredith and my wife, Stephanie, talking all the time.
She's a powerhouse. And once you talk to 3 to 5% of that most passionate subset, their ability to amplify and project with the depth of knowledge and passion and power that it's a tour de force. Like, it truly is. And so your wife becomes to be a disciple means to be a student, right? Your wife was a disciple. She was a student of Meredith, but a student of the power of the information. And once you know, you can't unknow something. And she was like, oh, well, now I'm a rebel with a cause. Now I'm an eco mom. Now I'm someone who's going to be an advocate for all children, and changes her behavior, right?
Okay, how funny is this that in our previous conversations, it's never coming up how well we both know Meredith. She did great things for our charity Child Rescue and engineered the whole invention of our youth program, the backyard broadcast, like for high school kids by high school kids. They did fundraisers to pay for police trainings and just help kids not get trafficked. It's great. But
so cool.
But, you know, it's funny that you talked about this idea of like inform, alert, alarm, equip. Like, I really like that list. I've never heard that list like that before. But like, Meredith is actually a great example to me of like, she's like such a force of nature, but she doesn't yell. She's not like in your face. She just, like, she gets into things with such conviction. Which is funny because she, comes in a small package, right? I think you and I probably both have a foot of height on her, but she's kind of like a freight train, of like, I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you. And it's not about, to your point, I mean, 85% of all communication is nonverbal, right? So and I'm such a student of, and I'm so curious about this idea of how you get people to trust, because I think trust, if you had to put it to the bottom line of any company, is the most valuable asset you own and you uphold and you try to maintain and build over time. And the level of trust and relationship we have with our community and our family and those that we let in and those that we work with and those brands that we choose. One of the first things I do whenever I go to a brand is I go to the About Us page. I'm like, who is here? Why should I care about them? what gives them the right to be a voice of confidence and integrity here? And are they consistent with that voice over time? And many brands fail there, and they lose a lot of great prospective advocates and buyers and relationships and relational connection. So, when it comes to business, that's one thing we did get right at The Honest Company, is we were two parents with a ton of information who nights and weekends that brand for over 3.5 years to get that to the place where at launch people were like, oh my God, like this is a great brand, and how did I not know about this? It felt mature because it was really, really every little detail was thought about. And I am such an advocate for the tone and manner of a brand, but its visual assets and how its voices comes together, and how you're delivering both fear and passion and conviction meets science and data and efficacy when it comes to performance and product. And but when it gets back to leading you all the way back to Meredith is a trusted voice in her community, and people know that. And once she knows, people will lean in. And I think everyone's working in some semblance across their world on how do I become a better communicator so that I engender a level of trust and relationship.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to text this episode to Meredith. So, Meredith, we love you. Okay.
We love you.
Let's talk about execution. Great ideas are a dime a dozen, right? And I have this argument with my brother, co-founder, partner of the last 20 years, a lot, because for me, there's like this 80-20 principle of like, I know lots of people who worked incredibly hard on the wrong idea. They didn't get far in life. Like you have to, like the hard work has to be applied to the right thing. And then you have this opposite problem of people who are only the dreamer. Like they're only thinking up the good idea, and then they're pretending like the good idea was enough. And maybe they feel owed of like, this is such a good idea, it should come together for me. Or maybe they, like I've been guilty of like, I've dreamed what the future can be like so much. I almost got like the dopamine hit of it, that it like lowers my urgency now or something. So you guys have a fantastic idea. It's obviously like resonating, especially with mothers in general. And then, comes the hard work of actually getting it on a shelf and getting people to hear about it and these kind of things. When you think about some founder listening today who has been able to do enough, customer validation or things to not just be like drinking their own Kool-Aid around their own boardroom table with their co-founders. Like they legitimately have something. And now it's time to execute and scale. What's one of the rookie mistakes you see there?
There are a few philosophies here. A couple of the philosophies are get your MVP, get your minimal viable product out there to the world and iterate over time, test and learn, just ship it. And I'm not in that camp. I'm a believer that today's consumer can sense detail and care much more, and they're much more savvy in it. And that you need to, yes, you have the idea, and you need to craft and hone and refine and touch it as many possible times, like cycle it a lot. Ask, be unapologetic around the asking, and like love and embrace the unvarnished, candid feedback. It hurts, but just deal with it. And sometimes you have to say, no, I'm going to put that one on the shelf. They don't get it. But I love the 80-20 rules. Like 80% is my vision, and 20% I'll listen and I'll get some feedback on refinement, but it's really my idea. And so I think that I am most founders are in the former camp. They're like, oh, just get it out the door and we can figure out over time. No, you can't. You cannot figure out brand over time. Not brand with a big B. You can't figure that out. can't figure out your story, you can't figure out your why, can't figure out, yes, you can modify and evolve and edit your product over time. And those are refinements that are iterative over time. And that's like newness and innovation. And then we've listened to you, but not at launch. You can't get that wrong.
I am so glad we're having this conversation because I love Steve Blank. You know, he's been on the show a couple of times, father of the lean startup movement that Eric Ries wrote about, right? Exactly. And something that I think you are bringing up is a nuance that a lot of people lose when they get like, you know, fourth hand version Steve Blank of what MVPs are, right?
Yeah.
To me, like if you listen to Steve, he's more like Pixar. He like, you know, Pixar tests their movie like 150 times over 3.5 years themselves until they know that it hits every time, and every audience they put in front of it laughs at this part, then they cry at this part, then they get angry about this part, and then this, and they know the response they're gonna, right? And all of that has happened pre-launch. Unlike most of the movie industry, and I love the movie industry, but most of them are kind of like doing a lot of gambling. Like, well, we like it. We did 2 test audiences about this one part, and we did like a 1% edit, and we cut this joke, but like not fundamentally reworking a script like a Pixar, right?
Right.
Steve Blank makes his students in his class now, you have to do 10 interviews for 10 weeks in a row, knowing your customer before you even get to present the product. Then you get to go back to do your customer validation. And when I'm interviewing, he's like, except for me, I would do 200 to 300, right?
That's amazing.
But this is not full page ads in the Wall Street Journal. This is like one-on-one. This is like Pixar behind closed doors.
Yes.
Pre-premiere, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to put words in your mouth. I want you to correct me. You're not saying don't test the product a whole bunch of times before launch. You're saying don't launch and then try to figure things out. Am I close?
That's exactly right. Don't launch a subpar or adequate. Adequate and fine are the worst words for me in any business. Like, oh, it's fine. No, it's not fine. Nothing's fine. It's either exceptional and leading towards exceptional, or it's inadequate and you're struggling and you're not going to make it.
Well, and it can be industry dependent, right? Like with your movie, you don't get a chance to do over your book. Like the book needs to be good to begin with, right? A consumer product like this, like your reputation, that word of mouth, you only get one chance to make a first impression. Where like, I get if you're making some, like you're messing around with some tech product and you're like, you don't have to be full stealth mode to have an MVP with some guys and some people who are willing to put up with something crappy and they're kind of testers, kind of client. Like, you know, I get that there is industry specific versions of this,
but where you're doing like a beta launch or you're launching to a subset of people, and that's different than mainstream mass, like it's on shelves launch. That's different. And it is.
Okay, so I want to go back to my question. Well, you finish your thought first. I didn't interrupt. Well, okay, so you spend 3 years. You embrace, you know, making a product that's going to stand out. You're making something that's going to be amazing, that day one people are going to go, where did this come from, right?
I mean, I would say like 75% of the time was the brand. Like we need to make sure that the brand is right. And yes, product, we over-index on making sure we had exceptional product, but brand for us was the product. You know, I had many investors were like, no, you have 17 products here. What's your one product? Like, no, the brand is the product. We need to get that right. We've gotten that right. This is why it's right. And so people were the inability to not get that right. That was a challenge.
Obviously, having Jessica Alba and being so well known off of her reputation is a big advantage. And we have all seen celebrities launch a product that didn't get the brand right. Can you talk about your fundamentals? Because it is fascinating. You know, I was at the biggest tech conference in Utah is going on today. I was over there this morning. Okay. And it's one of our clients, Clint Betts. He's the executive director at Silicon Slopes. And, you know, Gary Vee was talking this morning, and they've got movie stars and all sorts of people here. Right. And I walked around this place today looking at how people were dressed. And one of my clients who was with me, a friend, we were talking about it, and we had this conversation about like what shoes they wear, how they did their hair, what clothes they were wearing. It almost says more about what they think about themselves
Yes.
than anything else,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And there's absolutely commodity products where it's like, is this good or not? Is the price good or not? Let's just get it, right? But I think that I have spent a lot of time telling myself how logical I am about other purchases, when I get more honest, it's like, no, I picked that one instead of this one, not because it was that much better, but because what I thought it said about me, that I snowboarded in that jacket versus a Walmart jacket or something, you know?
Yep. No, I think that the visual tone and manner and how a brand expresses itself in its essence, again, consumers aren't able to really say like, oh, it's just cooler, or I like it more, or I like the color palette, like colors and textures and the aesthetics are, I always laughed with, early days, it was, let's get the front of the label right, but the back of the label is most important because that's delivering the content and who we are. Like, that's the meaning. That's the real value. Like, I can, 2 feet, 2 seconds, I can attract someone to pick the bottle up. Or I can, on the digital shelf, they're going to like the pretty label and they're going to think that's going to look great on the bathroom counter or the kitchen sink. But when they turn that bottle around, that needs to be poetry. That needs to be soulful and meaningful, and it needs to tell a story, and you need to like emotionally hook people. And I think that it's the emotions that are of that, like that river and that undercurrent that runs so deep that, again, people like get on that. To your point, it's like, I could wear the Walmart jacket. It's probably going to function just as well, but there's some emotional need that it's both satisfying for me and that community and what it says about me, that I want to be part of that crew, that clan that sometimes people call it a cult.
Yeah. So I want to ask about taste, because this is a fascinating subject that, in the world between art and science, feels closer to art a lot of times for me. And it's easy for people to get lost, or for people to, again, drink their own Kool-Aid on it, so I'm interested in your decision tree when it's such a subjective thing, and yet you need to do such a good job at it. How do you navigate that?
It is something that I would say that most brand founders struggle with it, because do you have the confidence in your taste to make the right choice? And I think it's intuitive, it's innate, it's a creative expression. You could learn by exposure but a lot of it is just it's an intuitive part of you. Read Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, right? And he talks about that, right? Sometimes like, again, a person like that, no technical ability, and yet people will pay him and invite him in and ask for his counsel because he's got confidence in that creative taste. And so I think founders will struggle here, and this is why either you're a creator and a creative, or you're an editor, and you've got to know who you are. And if you're an editor, fantastic. You're going to have to edit someone else's work, and you're going to have to choose and select and be a partner in that process. Or you're a creator, and you can be the seed and the germinator of that idea, and you can guide creatives. For me, I'm the former. I love the origin of that catalyst, of that magical moment. And then I love great designers, and a lot of great designers don't like to do this, but I like to have my hand on their shoulder. I'm like, okay, we're in this together. And that's different than a lot of creative agencies that you will find, and they're like, no. The clients, you sit back, we got it. You did the brief, you put some words on a paper, we got it from here. And you've got to know which path you're going to go down that road early in your career. And again, you can evolve in time, and it is a muscle for sure.
I'm so glad you brought up the Rick Rubin book. It's, by the way, Questlove's book on creativity is good, and John Cleese's book, the Monty Python guy, called Creativity is excellent. And I find most other creativity books terrible. Like, I absolutely love Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist and Do the Work in that series. I had Kirby Ferguson on with his YouTube series, Everything is a Remix. So great, right?
That's
Stephen
great.
Johnson, Where Good Ideas Come From, IDEO. But like so many of the other ones are they don't get what Rick Rubin gets of this like channeling this internal creator that humans are. And how fascinating that he can do it from Slayer to this rap star to Johnny Cash, right? And like tapping into this internal thing. And I think my question, because it's evident you have spent like that you had talent and have spent time flexing those muscles to grow them as well. When you put input in, when you think about what you curate, you know how Rick Rubin in the book talks about like, hey, maybe don't go listen to the other pop artists on the top of the charts. Like maybe go to a museum and take in classical art from 500 years ago, and maybe that will be a better inspiration. When you think about curating what goes into you so that it will help inform your taste coming out later, are there any routines? Are you a visual artist guy? Are you a music guy? Are you an everything guy?
That is a great question. I am. I'd be more the spiritual side. So, and spiritual not being religious, being more intuitive, and embracing the fact that, and having the curiosity to go with my internal gut. You know, I do believe that we're all we have a creative output some way. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people are kinetic and somatic in their bodies and expression, and you have to find your modality or modalities, and how they come to light. What I do know though about myself is that my mood and my creativity follows my action. So I need to put my body into physical inertia. I need to move. I need to like generate heat, and I need to work out. I need to exercise. I need to be disciplined with my food, and and only the best comes out of me when I do that. And when I'm slow and lazy, good things don't come out. So I think and how I feed myself in that way is yes, it's very visual. I really like digesting creative artists and a lot of different modalities in that world. And then I really like reading and listening to philosophy and thinkers and people that are compassionately curious about their own journeys and about willingness to say, hey, like I don't have it all, but I'm like, and that's, you know, jumping back to Rick again. Like he's believes in his essence, and he's cool with not knowing everything. He's cool with not having like all the answers all the time. And sometimes you'd be like, I don't know.
I think there's magic in what you just said. I think anxiety has got to be one of the greatest killers of genuineness in creativity. Unrealistic deadlines and self-concern, and you know, I was going to do an MFA in painting, and then I switched to being in commercial art. I was an illustration major. I was going to be a concept illustrator for the movies before I dropped out to be an entrepreneur. And like, I'm still an obsessive pinner. I think I accidentally have 28,000 followers on Pinterest because I have like 70,000 pins, like literally, right? And I think about when I get to go paint for me, like it's not a design project for one of my companies or something like this. And what you just brought up about Rick Rubin makes so much sense. Like you watch these videos of he's got some rap star, Adele, whoever it is, in his studio in Malibu. And he's just like in his shorts, flip-flops, his crazy hair, and he's like laying down. They're making music over here. He's just laying down, just taking it in. And do you know this cliche, you can't make a flower grow faster by pulling on it? You've heard this? Like, you know, water it, fertilize it, but you're not going to make it grow faster by pulling on it. There is this magic of the confidence that he exudes that if he feeds and waters the flower, like keep making music, I'm gonna lay over here, lay down and listen to it. Let's think about this. Let's, he goes on those lawn chairs in front of his white building there, and they sit and shoot the breeze, right? And and this like confidence that the flower will grow, that it will come to him. What a superpower to generate in any of the rest of us who are creative, right?
Yes. And the power and the beauty and the magic to be self-aware enough. And I think that the world of self-awareness in today's work environment is becoming more and more valued, but in an organization and in a culture, as a leader, as a founder, as whomever you are in any organization, knowing your lane, knowing what your tendencies are, knowing your deficiencies and your areas of growth, and what you want to work on, that's power. That's magic. That's a true value in an organizational structure, and you're part of a process. And I think anxiety or self-doubt causes people to get over their skis and believe that they can and should, and now I have a title and I must. Not always, right? And it's the using the classic check your ego at the door, right? Like, just it is not about, yes, you're trying to grow and succeed, and yet the more you have that in check and are self-aware of that, it's my belief that you will grow and succeed.
So assuming that someone can either, be the visionary or the editor, I can't remember the other term you used.
A creator or editor.
The creator or the editor. And they can get to the place where they have enough evidence that they've actually created something that their target market is going to identify with. This is going to be special. This is going to be out there, right? And then they need to get the word out. We've seen great success stories with celebrities in business, whether it's Jessica Alba or Ryan Reynolds or people like Ashton Kutcher becoming an investor. And then you see it even in the other ways of, like, a Mr. Beast who, didn't come out of, probably not going to be on the People's Sexiest Man Alive cover, right? He doesn't come from that classical background, but he was able to invent an audience who really resonate with him. And, his second year in his chocolate company, I think he said he'll do 200 million and believes it'll easily be over $1 billion, because he's like, he was on the All In podcast with Chamath and those guys, and like, do you think you'll get to $1 billion? He's like, yeah. I mean, like, look, Hershey's is 12 billion, Mars is in the billions. Like, come on, nobody's innovating those companies in 100 years. Of course this will get over. And he's talking about these other lines, right? And this idea of like spending endless amounts of time just propping up a logo versus giving a human for people to relate to, and those kind of things. What kind of advice would you have for folks who are saying, oh, maybe not just full page ads in the Wall Street Journal, a good idea. Maybe we want, maybe we want to make our founders higher visibility and become more the Richard Branson, somebody that people can connect to. What would be like your pros and cons, or do this, watch out for that, or just advice in general?
This is a big one, because for me, I have such a mixed feeling. Well, personally, and then I have my personal stance and then professional stance. I'll start with a personal. Whilst I see tremendous value whenever I put myself out there, whenever I call customers, whenever I do podcasts, whenever I write and go on speaker, like, and I love it. I do love it. It fills me up in a very unique way that's I'm curious about, because I usually ride on the introvert side. I don't want to, but it doesn't drive me. Whilst I know it's additive, but it doesn't keep me going. So I know I'm doing my part as a founder. And then the professional side is, I think now more than ever, given the range and the platforms and the uniqueness of our time, that founders need to be vocal and visual and available. And you need to have a point of view that matters and is unique to you. And I think that's a requirement. So some of these brands that like hide behind like about us, and it's like vague and you have no idea who's there. Like, I don't think that lands. And Mr. Beat is a perfect example of that. He's like, I'm going to be me and just deal with it. And like, here I am and let's roll. And that works. And it's incredibly impressive. And the Midday Squares founders, same thing. They're like, they're kooky, they're hokey, they're doing it, and they're trying, they're putting everything on tape. Everything is out there in video, and it's working. So tell your story, tell it over and over and over again in all the different ways and fashions, and that will serve you. I believe that. And yes, for Honest, jumping back to Honest for a second. Yes, Jessica had a platform, but she is a mom and she really, really cares. And she has a personal point of view. And, you collide the power of science and the power of mom and the power of a moment. And like, that works and worked.
But to me, that is the magic, right?
Yeah.
Is like, I mean, like how many times do, some celebrity, back in the BlackBerry days, some famous celebrity gets hired to be a spokesperson, and then like, unfortunately, the bottom of her tweet, it says sent by iPhone, right? Or like, pick your famous watch brand that the celebrity isn't really committed to. It's just there was a big check, and like we can't say like, ooh, which watch was Brad Pitt wearing in that ad, or somebody like that, right? Versus like a Ryan Reynolds who like, I don't even drink. And like, I'm an aviation gin fan, right?
Yeah.
Because like, this is his baby. Like he's not like some wallpaper stuck on the building at the end of the day, right? Like it's in the bones, and like, he is part of that company, right?
I mean, and he makes it relevant to the time. He puts his own skin in the game, so he's got money in it. And so you feel like, oh, like Brian's got plenty of money, but like, oh, he's the underdog in a massive category. Might as well. That seems cool. I like that. And he is beautifully available. Like, he's consistent with his wit and his cracked open behavior, and he's likable, right? He's accessible. If you feel like, oh, I can, the classic, I can have a beer with him, right?
There's lots of famous and wealthy people that own part of some sports team, but the way that he and his business partner have embraced Wrexham and go to the games and make their own doc about it, and like, they live it, and they're like trying to get themselves adopted by that town, and generally like, there's this ring of authenticity that PR can't pull off without really believing it. And so to me, that's the thing. Like, I'm not a mom. I only knew about Honest Tea, the tea, the drink.
Yes.
Like, that's what I'd heard about, right? And but like, even I knew, like, I wasn't paying attention to the brand at all. But even I knew that it wasn't like Jessica got slapped on later. Like I knew that she was like a part of this company, not some like paid spokesperson who showed up 2 afternoons a year for, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my question for you is, I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but most of the people watching this on YouTube today or listening were not previously in A-list movies, as a like one of the sexiest people alive kind of situation, right?
Yeah.
So most of us, if we were going to embrace something like this, it would be, we get to be the business side. If we were going to partner with someone who has an audience, whether a movie star, a YouTuber, a sports star, whatever.
Sure.
Right? When you think about a business owner, entrepreneur, founder getting into a situation like that, what kind of advice would you have on how to figure out, is this just a quick cash grab? Is this person actually going to put their heart and soul into it? Is, thinking about, because it would be so easy to be wowed out of like, oh my gosh, look at this famous person who's potentially willing to partner with our brand, and the right expectations aren't set or the right agreements aren't made, and like I could just see that going south so easy.
I know. Well, look, Jessica and I first connected back in 2008, so it was a different time in the landscape of access and celebrity and permissibility and the ability to bring people in at a founding level. My philosophy is if you are going to do it early and really have them be a true, deep, authentic part of it. Otherwise, people can sense it and feel it and they know it, right? If you come in late and, they 3 years in, they got a co-founder title, it doesn't really work. So if you're going to do it, decide early on and put some time and energy and effort around it. I'm not a person that believes every brand needs it. It's an activator and an agitator, but it's a double-edged sword for sure. And it could cut both ways. But I'd commit to making a decision on it and then, move accordingly.
Yeah, and I don't think that should be skipped. I mean, there's a lot of heartache at Adidas over Kanye these days, right? And that's truly a double-edged sword, right?
Yes, and to recover from it and to manage the outfall, and look, no one's perfect and no one's got the most pristine reputation out there, and things also happen in the future that you can't control. So choose carefully, choose wisely, choose thoughtfully. But if you're going to do it, go all in. My belief is you're going to go all in and really bring them in and have them put their own money in and have them get the appropriate title. Like Chief Inspiration Officer is weird, right? Like they're a co-founder and they're likely not going to be a
day-to-day operator.
Yeah, they're not managing things, so they're a co-founder and leverage their notoriety and their platforming, which is incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Maybe before we move on to this one, my limited experience in that world seems like there's a lot of people who treat celebrities or someone like this like a walking ATM machine instead of a real life person, and completely limit their ability to do anything real with folks because of the way they approach it or the way they try to use someone. And I'm using like the most aggressive language there, but like, can you talk about this idea of like really connecting like human to human with folks that get objectified?
It's hard because you're leveraging their notoriety in the marketplace as flypaper, right? You want the quick hit, the notable name and the face and the voice and the point of view, right? So they're there for a reason, and yet hopefully they're bringing additional value that you really can leverage over time. So Jessica brought a ton of value in the early days on. I was a dad, she was a mom. We were building for us, like end of 1 and 2, and that was good to have a sounding board. But the objectification in the world of business is it's hard to control for it, and it's sad when it gets dirty and nasty, and when it's they're brought into it for no reason, and so you'll likely have to over-index on good PR and some good comm strategies on how to manage against that if you get big enough and things get dark.
Yeah.
But and just be ready. It will. If you're in a small growing category, you're challenging incumbents, it gets real, right? First they'll watch you, and then they'll poke you, and then they'll sue you, and then hopefully they try to buy you. So, but the suing will come. The legal matters will come, and then you'll realize you made it.
I love it. Well, let's switch gears. Let's talk about round 2. Let's talk. I mean, obviously, you're a great investor. You're involved with a number of great companies, but let's talk about Prima.
Great.
Do you want to tell people why you started it and how grew so well that you were able to to sell it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Prima was a evolution of what I'd like to focus on. So for Honest, it was focusing on the epidemics of childhood disease and cancer and asthma and learning delays and some cognitive deficiencies that were directly and correlationally caused by toxicants in our end product. And well, if you're removing things, a lot of Honest is what it isn't. So we choicefully didn't put ingredients and certain efficacious ingredients in there for a reason. But if you're going to bring in thoughtful ingredients and molecules in our world, how do we get those to help us thrive and prosper? And so how we collide with the with the natural world in both positive and negative health outcomes. So Prima was a positive health outcome. So getting us to be balanced, to manage inflammatory response, to help with sleep, to really bring us in a better state of ourselves. And so therapeutically and botanically, leveraging these botanical ingredients, we leveraged quite a few botanicals and adaptogens and nootropics, as well as cannabinoids, which are a very interesting molecule that have been around for a long, long time, and that we endogenously, so we make our own cannabinoids. We have this system in our body called the endocannabinoid system, and we make our own cannabinoids in our body. Mom passes them on to her babies through in utero and through breast milk. So we have this system that these cannabinoids are active in bringing our bodies out of the fight and flight response and into a state of balance, into homeostasis. Because we live in stressful worlds, especially modern times, but also historic times like saber-toothed tigers. And also we have equally stressful worlds of cults of busy and digital addictions and all the nuance and stuff we put on our plate. And so we want to bring the body back into a state of relaxation and a bit more centered and groundedness, and that's what these molecules do. So I wanted to bring a level of integrity, a level of science, of emerging science, of really popularizing that and educating against that, and then also bring these cannabinoids and these molecules into everyday products, so topicals and facial products, as well as therapeutic body care and supplements. We brought them to everyone, to Sephora, to Vitamin Shop and Whole Foods and Nordstrom. So really popularized on where they showed up and really diversely expanded that set. And then also and worked with legislators, state and national, to bring some real regulatory change when it came to standards and sourcing and accountability and toxicology and what was in and what was out and purity. And then COVID happened, right? So COVID halted a lot of the change and regulatory progress that the industry has made, particularly in cannabis. And sadly, that is still the state of affairs today. So you've got this growing demand on the consumer side. You've got big pharma putting a ton of money behind it, big pharma as well as big CPG, sponsoring their own studies and discoveries, because we all realize in the world of medicine there are two ways to manage pain and balance inside the body: cannabinoids and opioids. That's it. Those are the two active molecules. And so it's an evolving platform and space that regulation is needing to come in. And it's sadly been held up. But there will be brands like Prima that will get it to a certain point where other big brands are like, okay, this matters, and we're gonna consolidate a few of the best in class brands here and really make a play at it. And that's, we saw an opportunity for the right time with the right strategic, that it was a great place to really both for us to step off, but also for them to fuel in a really unique fashion. And so, we brought it to a really, really a nice spot. And it's also, as a founder and anyone who's grown something, is also bittersweet to like, oh, wait, what? Like, I don't, make sure you do that right. And so the make sure you do that right. And the baton pass is like, you only could do it so long and be careful with it. And, people will learn. So it is, but I'm still part of the team on a strategic advisor perspective, and I will help. But it's, having been on this side of like build and pass, the passing is a piece that no one likes to talk about because everyone's like, oh, you transacted and good for you. Like, you made the top of the mountain. You're like, yes. And there's a lot there. Like, founders aren't super, like, I want to start debunking, and this is a whole nother conversation that we can have, but debunking the idea that founders and entrepreneurs are superheroes. Like, you wear a cape and like, you must have great days and you're changing the world. And like, it's, yes, the work is long. Sure, but that's hard and that's choice, right? You've chosen. That's all. Like, no one's bemoaning and playing victim on that. It's the psychic ache, like the deep, deep worry of my team and our audience and the health, and especially in the world of healthcare, like the health of those that we're serving, and really being a uplifter and a champion for this emerging industry you're helping create. So like this weight is heavy and chosen, but also heavy, and never easy.
There's so many analogies for founders with parenthood, both with like both your staff and also your product you're offering, and even your clients. And like, as you describe that, like, because we've been talking about movies, all I can think about is like that book author who's just slaved to get the book right where they wanted it, and it worked, and everybody read it, and they sold the movie rights, and then all of a sudden people see they see how they chop it up and lose the best parts, and like, you wonder, like, as you were talking, that's the analogy I was thinking of, like, oh, now they have to see somebody kind of wreck your baby a little bit, even though it's going to get bigger and even more people are going to know about it and they're going to come back and buy your book. They like, you very rarely hear of an author that says, oh my gosh, those guys nailed it. That movie is exactly the book. Never happens, right?
It's, yeah, it is. It's as it unfolds, and you're never, this is my work. I have a couple of areas that I'm really working on, especially as a founder, especially as a dad, especially as a person just having inner dialogue, is like that ability, like control enthusiasm that I like to say that I always have. Like, I really think I can do it, and I can do it all, and I can control it all, and I can't. I have to like really sit back, and I can't always do. I have to be a little bit more, and I have to be compassionate with and accept the fact that I can't control it all, and that's okay. And I could laugh through it. Sometimes I get a heartache and running out because it's hard, but yeah, like, and that's an age and life stage thing too, right? Like, the older you get, the more you're willing to accept. And anyone who's in their 20s, do not lose your 20s like sampling and trying to figure out. Put your head down and grind and like try to do it all, because that's the time of life. 20s and 30s, do it, go hard. Because when you're approaching 50, like I am, you'll be in a different phase.
There's so many entrepreneurs and people trying to make an impact in the world with really good intentions who work hard and have not been able to accomplish what you've accomplished. Without being humble, what do you think that you do differently? What's different about you?
I think I care just a little bit more. I like really, there's the head and the heart of it all, the art and the science of it all, but I lead from my heart, and I really, I lead in with the philosophy that I must serve, and I must be a steward of that relationship and the future and these moments, and I feel like I have to leave it better. And so leading with the heart for me has always served me and allowed me to garner some success and some traction. So yeah, I would say it's that would be a superpower of mine.
I mean, I can see that as we talk. I mean, you talked about this idea of being all in. Like, as you talk, it's evident that you weren't holding any good ideas for the next business, that you were like, it wasn't just a job, that you were like, you were in whole hog.
I don't know, like, people can, like, again, we're feeling, we're wired for connection, and we're wired for emotional bandwidth and ranges that and this is more philosophical and it get a bit more creative, but I think that people want to have that hit of essence and that vibe of indescribable, that you see it, you feel it on a brand, you feel it in a product, you see it you feel it and see it in interaction. So yeah, I would say lean into that more. And it is a Brene Brown around the vulnerability piece, but it's not only being vulnerable, but it's harnessing and doing the work on why you're going to show up there and what you really care about. Like, you can crack open, but like, do the work to really show me and tell me the reason why you're here.
But it's obvious that you're like a true believer on what you're doing. I'm reading the Walter Isaacson, Elon Musk book right now.
Yeah.
And like, I don't agree with all of his actions. And I think there's plenty of people that have very strong opinions about him. But, it's pretty hard as you hear these stories, even when he's doing things like treating people poorly, which I don't agree with. It's pretty hard to not feel like he's a true believer. You know what I mean? And it's contagious.
I agree. He's undoubtedly a human that has said, okay, I'm going to sacrifice, and I'm like, the edges are going to, I'm just going to get them wrong, but I'm all in here, and I'm a true believer, and I'm going to transform humanity and this planet. And I hate what he does on the social stuff. Like, he's got to be better. Someone's got to guide him. Like, he needs to be at least say, here's a deficiency. Like, who can I bring into my team to help focus me and like at least help me, guide me? So that's where I don't give him any range. But like, on his all-in work product, he's getting it done.
Listen, this has been so fun. We're gonna have to have you back on the show. As we close off, if people want to follow what you're doing next, is LinkedIn, Twitter, like a website, what are good places?
LinkedIn would be the place that I would be expressing that what's next stuff. And people can always email me, Christopher Gavigan at gmail.com. Like, I'm not afraid to field that stuff. And yeah, I'm working on some fun ideas. So
you want to give people any teasers?
I like to hear. I'm struggling with the fact I have it written up here on my window with a white marker. I'm struggling with the fact that one of them is so big that to Elon's point, I know I am. I'm spending the time doing the work and like inviting and building up the belief system that like, this is my next thing. And that takes time. Like, do you have, because any founder, you're starting something, like the negative 12 to 24 months it takes to launch, 10 years. Like, you're going to be in it for 10 years, at least. Just commit 10 years. Like, if you transact and do things, great, fantastic. But 10 years, like, you're going to give a decade. So be ready. But this one would be extraordinarily fun.
Well, okay, we'll wrap up with this. Guest choice. You can either go for one of the best pieces of advice you ever received, or a piece of advice you'd go back and give a younger version of yourself.
I think I will take advice, and the advice that I would remind the younger version of myself, but the best piece of advice that I got is to always make sure that you uphold and focus on your relationships and your work product that relates to your reputation, right? Ethically your standards, your principles, your values that like encompass the who you are and in your work and how you show up. Make sure you guard that and do it in the smallest of ways and the smallest of interactions with people. I'm astounded how Meredith Blakes of the world or people in your past will show up, and there's an essence and a vibe and an energy around you in the world, and people talk about you and they want to know you. And in both, if it's a good interaction or bad interaction, right? It's kind of like a product. If you have a good interaction, you'll tell 5 people. If you have a bad engagement, you'll tell 20. It's the same thing. So make sure you do the work to like be thoughtful with your integrity and how you show up in the world.
I kind of feel like that's a theme of this whole interview, though. Be thoughtful, be intentional, don't mail it in, don't stop short, don't hold back.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like it's the message we've got this entire hour. So this is great.
Great. Well, keep it thematically relevant.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks everybody for listening.